Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something pretty incredible. We are opening up the ultimate unlocked vault. Just imagine being handed the keys to the secret, unfinished works of literally the greatest pop perfectionist in modern history. Well, that is exactly what happened with Michael Jackson's 2014 album, Xscape. We're going to deconstruct this completely fascinating musical and technological experiment and look at exactly how modern producers attempted to transport the king of pop straight into the 2010s. But, before we even hear a single note of the music, we've got to understand the incredibly high stakes here. When Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, the world's demand for his unreleased work was, frankly, insatiable. Yet releasing unfinished material, that went completely against Jackson's nature. He was a notoriously relentless perfectionist. This is a guy who obsessed over every single vocal syllable. The very first posthumous attempt to navigate this was the 2010 album Michael, and honestly, it was heavily criticized. It felt rushed, kind of disjointed, and it sparked this massive controversy over the authenticity of the vocals themselves. It was a fractured reality that left fans incredibly skeptical.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for how we're going to explore this 2014 time capsule. First, the posthumous album dilemma. Second, defining contemporization. Third, the rules of the vault. Fourth, past versus present. And finally, ethics and the legacy. Let's get started.
Section 1. The posthumous album dilemma. Essentially, commerce versus integrity. The core issue with putting out a posthumous Michael Jackson record is that massive clash between raw commerce and pure artistic integrity. You've got an artist who labored endlessly over his sound, suddenly silenced, leaving behind this sprawling legacy of unfinished business.
Which brings us to Section 2, Defining Contemporization. Enter executive producer L.A. Reid. Epic Records brought in Reid, the legendary executive who discovered Usher and Pink, and he didn't just want to drop a cash-grab compilation of dusty B-sides. Instead, he brought in this bold, unifying concept for the whole project.
And he called that concept contemporization. So what does that actually mean? The idea was to take 8 unreleased recordings straight from the vault, hand them over to a roster of A-list modern hitmakers, and have them build entirely new sonic landscapes around Michael's pristine, untouched vocals. Reid stripped everything away just to find the raw, naked performance. And then he asked one guiding question. If Michael were alive today, what would he want this to sound like?
Moving right along to Section 3, the rules of the vault. To avoid those disastrous pitfalls of that 2010 album, L.A. Reid knew he absolutely had to protect Michael's organic voice from getting swallowed up by the modern production machine. So he laid down 3 ironclad mandates for the 4 producers he hired: Timbaland, Rodney Jerkins, Stargate, and John McClain. Step 1. Only complete vocal takes were allowed. No splicing together random syllables to make a word. Step 2, absolutely no new lyrics and no contemporary vocal processing, like autotune. The voice had to stay completely organic. And Step 3, the producers could completely reimagine the synths and drums, but they had to respect the original song structure.
Which brings us to Section 4, Past versus Present. Basically, the ghost versus the machine. We're going to deconstruct some of the album's best tracks right now, pitting the ghost of the past against the machine of the present.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer sonic leap we see on the lead single, Love Never Felt So Good. Over on one side, we have the 1983 Origin. It's this breezy, piano-driven disco pop number co-written with Paul Anka. It has that classic, innocent Motown shuffle. But on the flip side, producers Timbaland and John McClain completely transformed it into a 2014 EDM-tinged mainstream pop hit. They dropped in a modern house beat, cascading strings, and even brought in Justin Timberland for a duet. It acted as this seamless bridge between generations, really proving that Michael's voice still held massive mainstream currency. Let's look at another one. Take the track Chicago and see how contemporization builds a completely different atmosphere. The 1999 demo was a stark, minimal R&B track with this plodding, lonely piano line. But under Timbaland's direction, it morphed into a dark trap soul masterpiece. Timbaland sped up the tempo, layered in these stuttering hi-hats and a deep 808 bass, and effectively transformed Michael's lonely confession into what sounds like a frantic, desperate escape from a crime scene.
Then we have the album's absolute crown jewel, Slave to the Rhythm. The 1990 Origin was an industrial hip-hop track with a thumping beat that quite literally sounded like a factory assembly line. Well, Timbaland and J-Roc took that and turned it into a futuristic, glitchy pop tour de force. They even used a filtered vocal effect on the chorus, making Michael sound like he was trapped inside a machine.
It perfectly amplifies the song's core metaphor about the relentless, trapping pressure of the entertainment industry.
Another totally fascinating transformation is Blue Gangsta. The 1999 original is this cinematic orchestral R&B track with minor key strings. Timbaland takes those exact bones and builds a dark, synthwave epic. He drops in a heavy trap beat and these massive dramatic orchestral hits that turn the song into a thrilling neo-noir soundtrack. Amazingly, this is a prime example of a contemporized version that many critics argue actually surpasses the original demo, which, is a genuinely rare feat for any posthumous remakes.
And if you take a step back, by presenting these specific unreleased tracks, the album actually provides a really cool historical roadmap of Michael's creative evolution over 2 decades. You can literally trace his journey from his Motown roots in 1983 to the aggressive, streetwise energy of his late 80s bad era, all the way to the futuristic, complex, and super dark R&B he was experimenting with right before the turn of the millennium.
Finally, let's turn to Section 5, Ethics and the Legacy. Art or exploitation? Because let's be real, you simply can't discuss a posthumous Michael Jackson album without acknowledging the fierce ethical debate it triggers.
Commercially speaking, the verdict was crystal clear. The project debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, hit number 1 in 26 different countries, and even won an American Music Award. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Michael's voice still commanded the global spotlight.
But critically, it was highly polarizing. On one side of the debate, you have the purists, like Michael's legendary former producer Quincy Jones. His stance was incredibly sharp. He said, "Let the dead rest. You can't add to a finished painting." For folks in this camp, touching the unreleased tapes is basically akin to tampering with history itself.
But then, on the exact opposite side, you have producers like Rodney Jerkins, who originally worked with Michael and actually returned for this specific project. He defended the album by pointing out Michael's chameleon-like nature, noting, Michael loved working with new producers. He would have wanted his music to live on.
Ultimately, Xscape managed to defend itself against those cash grab accusations through 3 main pillars. First, transparency. By including the original demos on the deluxe edition, purists and new fans were given a choice of which era they actually wanted to listen to. Second, vocal integrity. They only used verified multitracks with breathtaking clarity, absolutely no sound-alikes. And third, the what-if factor. The album successfully functions as a thrilling thought experiment, imagining the collaborations a constantly evolving artist might have pursued today.
The true legacy of Xscape is that it proves one undeniable fact. Michael Jackson's vocals are entirely timeless. Honestly, whether you place his raw voice over a breezy 1970s disco track, an industrial 90s beat, or a heavy 2010s trap banger, it still sounds like pure magic. The production surrounding him is merely the frame. The voice itself is the masterpiece. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. When we open the vault and apply modern technology to a ghost in the machine, we have to ask ourselves, does updating a legendary artist's unfinished work preserve their legacy for a whole new generation, or does it overwrite the history they left behind? It's a fascinating question, and for sure, one you'll have to decide for yourself when you listen to Xscape. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the art around you.